What if I told you one moment on Family Feud could stop the entire show in its tracks? Welcome to Harvey's Highlights, the channel where we uncover the moments that left audiences speechless and even Steve Harvey himself completely stunned. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the unbelievable stories we bring to you. This story begins on a regular taping of Family Feud, with Steve Harvey leading the game as usual, cracking jokes and keeping the energy high. But that all changed when a seemingly normal question about family life sparked an emotional chain reaction that no one in the studio was prepared for. The contestants were a married couple, playing against a team of strangers. Everything seemed routine until the host asked a question about memorable moments in their life together. The husband's expression suddenly shifted. There was a weight in his eyes that made Steve pause mid-question. "What is it? You look like you just remembered something serious," Steve said, stepping closer, trying to read the tension in the room. The husband swallowed hard and raised his voice slightly. I need to say this now," he said, and the studio fell silent, the usual laughter replaced with an uneasy quiet. Steve, sensing the gravity of the moment, leaned in. "All right, go on. Tell us." The husband's voice cracked as he blurted out words that would change the tone of the entire episode. "Every Tuesday, she forgets what I've been telling her all week, and it's not just small things. It's the promises we made to each other." The audience started murmuring, sensing this was no ordinary Family Feud answer. Steve's smile disappeared completely, replaced with a look of concern and focus. "Hold up. Slow down a second. Let's make sure we understand. You mean she doesn't remember a promise you made?" he asked, directing his gaze at the wife. The wife's eyes welled up. "I didn't forget," she said quietly. I didn't realize how important it was to him." Steve walked toward the couple, his voice gentle but firm. "Listen, this isn't about winning points or money anymore. This is bigger, much bigger. Everybody, I need you to just listen for a second." The crowd went silent, hanging on every word. Steve had seen plenty of crazy moments in Family Feud, but the tension in this room was different. It wasn't staged. It wasn't for TV. It was real life playing out in front of millions of viewers. The husband wiped a tear from his cheek, looking at Steve and then back at his wife. "I just wanted her to remember. Just that one promise," he said. Steve nodded slowly. "I hear you. And you know what? We're gonna stop for a moment. The game can wait. The heart cannot." The camera cut to a commercial, but the murmurs and quiet sobs from the audience filled the studio. Everyone knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, a moment where reality overpowered a game show, and the host himself had no choice but to pause, to reflect, and to let a family have their moment. This was a Family Feud episode like no other. Steve Harvey's reaction was just the beginning of a story that would leave viewers around the world stunned. When the cameras returned from the commercial break, the studio felt completely different. The usual energy of Family Feud, the laughter, the playful banter, the fast-paced questions, had been replaced by a quiet tension. Even Steve Harvey's usual jovial demeanor was subdued. He walked slowly back to the stage, his hands clasped behind his back, taking a moment to look at the couple. "All right," Steve said, his voice calm but heavy. "We're gonna keep playing, but first I need to understand. Tell me exactly what's going on here." The husband, still emotional, took a deep breath. It's the little things," he said. "I've been trying to keep our promises, the ones that matter most. And every Tuesday I don't know. I feel like I'm losing her in those moments, like she forgets how much it matters to me." Steve nodded slowly. "I get that. That's real life. That's marriage. That's everything." He looked at the wife. "And you, ma'am, do you understand why this is hitting him so hard?" The wife's voice trembled. "I do now. I didn't realize how much it hurt him until today. Seeing him like this, it makes me see things differently. I want to do better." Steve walked around the stage, addressing the audience as much as the couple. "See, this is why we play this game. Not just for points, not just for money. Sometimes it's to show us what really matters. And today it's about this couple right here. Life isn't always funny. Sometimes it's heavy. But we gotta talk about it, we gotta hear each other. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Steve paused, letting the gravity sink in. I've hosted this show for years and I've seen a lot of stuff, but this is different. This is about love. This is about promise. And you know what? I need everyone to understand that. The husband's voice broke again. I just wanted her to remember that our promise means everything to me. That's all. Steve placed a hand on the husband's shoulder. And that's exactly why we stopped. That's why the game stopped. Because sometimes a moment like this is bigger than the game itself. Bigger than any answer on the board. Then Steve turned to the wife. You got something to say? She nodded, swallowing hard. I just want him to know I hear him. I understand now. I'm sorry for not realizing sooner. The studio was completely quiet. No clapping, no laughter. Just the weight of that moment filling the room. Steve Harvey, usually quick with a joke, didn't speak for a full 30 seconds, letting the couple's honesty resonate. Finally, he stepped back, raising his hands slightly. I think that's the lesson here, folks. Family Feud is a game, but life doesn't wait. And sometimes, you gotta stop everything to tell the people you love exactly how much they mean to you. The cameras captured every expression. The tears, the nods, the silent acknowledgement from the audience. It was raw. It was real. And it was a side of Family Feud that viewers rarely see. The human side, beyond the points, beyond the money, beyond the laughs. The husband looked at Steve. Thank you for letting us have this moment. Steve smiled, a quiet, heartfelt smile. No, thank you for reminding all of us what really matters. The tension in the studio didn't dissipate as the game resumed. Instead, it seemed to linger, wrapping around every contestant and audience member like a heavy, invisible blanket. Steve Harvey, usually quick to crack jokes and get the energy back up, chose his words carefully this time. All right, let's try to get back to the game, Steve said softly. But remember, what just happened? That's not something you forget. That's life. The husband, still visibly shaken, tried to focus on the next question. Steve, I'm not sure I can think straight, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Steve nodded knowingly. That's okay. You don't have to. Take a second. Everybody take a breath. He gestured to the audience. I want everyone here to understand something. You might be watching a TV game show, but right here, right now, real life is playing out in front of you. And that's sometimes heavier than any question we can ask. The wife reached over, taking his hand. I know now, she said. I'll never take for granted what matters again. Steve turned to the camera, addressing the millions watching at home. See, this is why I do this show. Because sometimes people come on here thinking it's just a game. But life has a way of showing up in unexpected ways. And sometimes that's bigger than any answer on the board. A producer, standing near the sidelines, whispered something to Steve. He shook his head slowly, refusing to break the moment. Nope, he said quietly. Not yet. Not until they both get this off their chest. The husband took a deep breath. Every Tuesday, I leave a note for her. Small things. But I don't know if she really sees it. I guess I wanted to say it out loud. To be heard. Steve stepped closer, crouching slightly to be at eye level with him. You've been heard. Loud and clear. And that's why we stopped the game. Because some things, some truths can't wait. And sometimes, they need a spotlight, just like this moment right here. The wife looked up at Steve, tears glistening in her eyes. I get it now. I've been blind, but I won't be anymore. Steve, nodding, slowly stood upright. Good. That's all I wanted to hear. Life is messy. Love is complicated. And sometimes marriage is just about paying attention when it really counts. The audience began to clap softly. A quiet, respectful applause that felt more like acknowledgement than celebration. Steve motioned to them. Let's give them a moment. Because moments like this, they don't come around every day. The cameras continued rolling, capturing not just the couple, but also Steve's rare vulnerability. His voice softened, almost to himself. I've seen a lot of things in my life. A lot. But moments like this, they stay with you forever. And I think that's what today is all about. The husband squeezed his wife's hand, finally letting himself exhale. "Thank you, Steve," he said. "Thank you for letting me speak." Steve nodded, his face serious, almost reverent. "No, thank you for reminding all of us that the game is temporary. But the heart is forever." The studio was quiet now, but not uncomfortably so. It was a charged, reflective silence, the kind that only comes after a moment of raw honesty. Steve Harvey stood at the side of the stage, arms folded, watching the couple and the audience react. Even the crew seemed caught in the gravity of the moment. Steve finally broke the silence. "You know," he said, his voice steady but gentle, "we come on this show to have fun, to laugh, to compete. But every now and then, life shows up in ways that no one can script. And today it showed up loud and clear." The wife wiped her eyes and smiled shakily. "Steve, I've never realized the little things he does, how much they mean. I thought I knew, but I didn't." Steve stepped closer to the couple. "It's easy to forget, isn't it? Life gets busy. You get caught up in your own world. But these small, everyday acts, they're the heartbeat of a marriage. And now you're seeing it, and hearing it, and feeling it." The husband nodded, his voice breaking slightly. "Every Tuesday, I put a note in her bag. Little reminders that I love her. But today, I guess I wanted to say it in front of everyone, to make sure she knew." Steve's eyes softened, his tone becoming almost fatherly. "And she knows now. That's why I had to pause everything. The game can wait. But truth, honesty, heart, that can't wait. Not for ratings, not for a question, not for anything." The audience started murmuring, some softly applauding, moved by the vulnerability on stage. Steve held up a hand. Wait, let them have this. Don't clap yet, because this is real life, not a performance. And that's the part that matters." The wife laughed softly through her tears. "I always thought I was paying attention, but I wasn't. I see it now. I hear him now. And I promise I won't take it for granted again." Steve leaned on the podium, looking at both of them with a mixture of awe and respect. Sometimes it takes a moment like this to remind us all that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up every day, even when it's small, even when it's quiet, even when no one else sees it. The husband nodded, squeezing her hand again. I just wanted her to know, to really know, that every little thing I do, it comes from here." He tapped his chest, over his heart. Steve's voice softened further. "And now, everyone watching, you see it too. That's why we do this. Not just for laughs, not just for fun, but for moments like this. Moments that remind us why we care, why we try, why we love." The audience finally erupted into a quiet, respectful applause. Steve smiled, shaking his head slowly. All right, let's take a breath. Let's let that sink in. Because this right here, this is what matters." The cameras continued to roll, capturing every expression, every quiet tear, every moment of reconciliation. Steve finally sat back, muttering softly to himself. Sometimes the biggest answers aren't on the board. Sometimes they're right here, in front of you. The atmosphere in the studio had completely shifted. What began as a standard Family Feud episode had transformed into something far more profound. An unplanned reminder of love, commitment, and the power of honesty. Steve Harvey looked around at the audience, who were still visibly moved, some wiping away tears, others nodding as if reflecting on their own relationships. Steve cleared his throat, his signature humor giving way to sincerity. "You know, I've hosted this show for years. I've seen some wild answers, some ridiculous moments, and I've laughed until I cried. But tonight, I learned something new. And I hope everyone watching at home learns it too." The husband turned to Steve, still holding his wife's hand. "I didn't think a simple note, something so small, could do this." His voice cracked, revealing the depth of emotion he'd held inside for so long. Steve shook his head slowly. Son, that's the thing about love. It's the little things that count the most. You don't need fireworks or grand gestures. You need consistency. You need heart. And sometimes, you need to say it out loud, even if it scares you. The wife smiled through her tears. I get it now. I really do. And I'm going to make sure I never take him for granted again. Steve stepped forward, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. That's all anyone can ask for. You see, marriage, relationships, life, it's messy, it's unpredictable, and it doesn't come with an instruction manual. But it does come with moments like this. Moments that stop you in your tracks. Moments that make you remember why you fight for the people you love every single day. He looked back at the camera, his voice steady but soft. And that's why I paused the show. Not because of the game, not because of ratings, not because of a wrong answer, but because love, respect, and honesty deserve the spotlight. Always. And tonight, that's exactly what we saw. The audience erupted into heartfelt applause, some rising to their feet. Steve took a step back, letting the moment breathe, letting the family absorb the gravity of what had just happened. All right, he said finally, smiling warmly. Let's get back to the game. But remember this. Every question, every answer, every laugh, every point. None of it matters more than the people you love. None of it matters more than honesty and heart. As the cameras began to roll again, the husband leaned toward his wife. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting me show you who I really am. She squeezed his hand tightly. Thank you for never giving up on us. Steve Harvey watched the exchange, nodding quietly to himself. Sometimes, folks, you don't need the answer on the board. The biggest answer, the one that matters the most, is right here. He tapped his chest, his eyes reflecting the emotion of the moment. The audience erupted into applause once again, the sound echoing through the studio as Steve finally allowed a small chuckle. All right, we're rolling again. But remember, the game can wait. The heart cannot. And with that, Family Feud continued. But the memory of that pause, of that raw, unforgettable moment, lingered in the hearts of everyone present.